Hey, it's Steve. Want to take a couple minutes and we're going to talk a little bit about sensitivity. This is a sensitive subject, and it's also a thing that I think there's a really important differentiation to be made here, okay? First off, I'm going to start with this assertion. Nobody is too sensitive. You're not too sensitive. It's possible that you're too reactive, and we're going to get to that, but you're not too sensitive. Now, you might be more sensitive than the average person. You might have a greater physiological response to certain sorts of inputs, whether those are smells, vision, sounds, other things in your environment. Absolutely, you may notice them in a way that other people don't, or be attuned to them to a greater extent. And that is a thing that can be a problem. But again, it's not really about being too sensitive. That's about being reactive. See, here's the thing. That sensitivity gives you an awareness, a connection to what's happening in the world on a level that a lot of people don't have. That is an asset. That is essentially like you see the world at 4K while everyone else is operating more like on a regular HD TV level, right? And so that really gives you greater awareness, greater insight. This can be very useful in relationships. It can be useful in business. It's something that I specifically focus on helping my coaching clients with and helping them to use that as a strength in business. And it's really just a very useful thing in life. Now, the catch is that yes, there is a lot more data that you're taking in and that you need to process. And that is where the potential challenge comes in. Now, before I get to that, I want to throw out this though. It is actually possible to be too insensitive or not sensitive enough. And here's one kind of crazy example. There are actually people who cannot feel pain. It's called, I believe, congenital analgesia. And the thing is, it seems kind of cool, right? No pain, awesome. But what happens is there are all sorts of things that they don't feel where that leads to problems. They get small minor injuries they don't even realize that they have, and then they make them worse by, continuing to operate as normal. Or they can get infections or other sorts of things, and all the things that we would know or feel that would tell us, oh, something's not right here, they don't. So not really a good thing there. Now, in a more general sense, we've all seen people who are a little insensitive, right? They don't pick up on social cues. They don't recognize certain things that are happening or going on. And that, again, is kind of like blinding yourself. And if you want to be able to make the best choices that you can, well, you need the data. It's really hard to make good choices when you have a really limited or small data set, right? So let's talk about reactivity, because it is totally possible to be too reactive. And some people are, and maybe you are. Most of us have spaces where we are maybe a little bit more reactive than we would ideally be. So by reaction, what am I talking about? I mean, an unconscious, kind of immediate, automatic response to an input, right? It's kind of that default snap response. That can be something that is either a byproduct of our own human instincts, right? Or just our own brain and the way that it is wired. It's something that can come from training, and that way it can be a very good thing. Or it's something that can come from experience, and that can go either way, right? If we've had certain types of experiences, our reaction is going to be not necessarily good. An example of this might be what we have observed others doing, right? Whether it's we grew up and saw certain things in our family, or we maybe in our early days in business saw how, certain things were done in a business and just kind of copied that because, well, that's what you do. And that's not necessarily good there. And the training piece can be obviously very powerful. And when we look at people who have to be able to react in very quick ways, that's an example of where the training really becomes important. Now, the instinct piece that's where it can be very tricky, because that's where we are really subject, if we're not careful, to being able to be controlled, manipulated by others, because there are certain things that we're wired for. We're wired for survival. We're wired for watching for threats. And it's very easy to have that stuff get tripped or triggered if we're not careful. And so that's one of the things where being highly reactive can really lead to a lot of trouble, especially if you have people in your environment who recognize it and are willing to use it against you. And I could argue that in this day and age, we have a very large environment of things that are trying to get us to react. Let's look at social media. Let's look at the media in general. Honestly, they're seeking to get your attention. They want to trigger emotion in you. They want to get you fired up because that'll pull your attention. And that's not necessarily in your best interest. And so this is something that can be a huge distraction in life, in your business, and it can really manipulate your moods and such. Now, what do we do about this? Well, here's the good news. There is actually a little bit of a space between the stimulus that we get from whatever input in our environment there is, and when we choose, again, whether it's kind of the unconscious automatic response or a deliberate one, but when the unconscious response, there's a gap there, a small gap of time. Now, I'm going to make a comparison. Let's look at baseball. A batter has a very small gap of time between when the pitcher releases the ball and the batter has to make a choice as to whether they're going to swing at the pitch or not. I don't remember the number on what a small amount of time it is, but it's very small. But with training, right, baseball players are able to learn to recognize the key cues and things and to be able to make more informed choices about do they swing or don't they swing. So the good news for us is we often can actually just pause. Like imagine if the batter could wait till the ball's halfway there and be like, okay, let me pause this. And in fact, let me rewind it and play it again in slow-mo. And then let me decide if I'm going to swing or not. And the reality is that's a lot more like what we're dealing with most of the time. Somebody says something happens, we're getting certain stimuli or inputs. We can step out of the situation, think about and process that input, and then make a deliberate response. And that is where the power is, right? That is super powerful. This is something that's been known for a really, really long time. There's famous quotes about it and all kinds of things. The key for us is really learning how to use it. Now, if you are somebody with elevated sensitivity, this is all the more important for you. And first, I want to give you two key things that'll help make it easier for you to be able to respond instead of react. The first one, well, self-care. Make sure you are doing a good job of managing your energy, managing your emotional, physiological well-being so that you are less likely to be kind of overwhelmed by that input, because that's where we can get to a space where we start to become reactive. So that's really essential. The second piece is managing your environment. You want to be mindful of what sort of inputs there are that are draining, that are distressing, and really look at how you can set some boundaries around those. And that's a really, really important thing. And anybody who is someone who has elevated sensitivity, it is essential that you think about that environment. And I can tell you from my own experience that the work environment that I'm in has made a huge difference in how I have felt, right? Working in an office full of cubicles, so much noise and chaos and just really uncomfortable. When I was working as a therapist, doing one-on-one work with just one person in an office that was my space that I had set up and designed, very comforting, right? Same thing when I'm doing coaching work from home here. Again, my environment, I can control it. I can set it up. That helps me to set up an environment that's calm, that's relaxing for me. That works really well. I had a period in time where I was actually doing some emergency room work. This was a long time ago now. And that was incredibly distressing to me because of all the noise, the chaos, the bright light, all the activity going on. It was just too much for me. And so I learned that it's just not really something that I can do. So we do have to be mindful of that and work to set ourselves up for success effectively. And then the other key thing is just learning to recognize when you're getting triggered, to recognize what are the feelings that you have. It might be thoughts, it might be physical stimuli or reactions that you have, and learning to see, oh, I've been triggered, and hitting pause, stopping, stepping back from what just happened, whether it's literally physically stepping back, taking a time out, just pausing and thinking, and really putting your awareness beyond the stimulus. We tend to focus on that. But if we stop and step back and realize this is not an immediate threat, I can take a minute, I can think, I can contemplate here. That gives us the ability to step back from the stimulus and to start thinking about some really important things, like who do I want to be? What do I stand for? How would the best version of me respond in this situation? And when you start to think about that a little bit, it puts you in a position to be able to respond in a way that's just really a lot more deliberate, more conscious, and ultimately way more effective, of course. Now, here's the bonus. If you do this and really practice this more and more, what you'll see is as you practice with specific sorts of triggers, right, over time, you will effectively train yourself and you'll develop effective, thoughtful, constructive reactions. And so what's going to happen is you're going to be able to allow yourself to react because you've got a trained reaction that's healthy and effective. It'll happen quicker. And the key is it'll take less energy because this process I'm talking about stopping, stepping back, thinking, contemplating, and then responding, it is more energy intensive than an automatic response. Absolutely true. But you can, again, train that. And that's going to get you to a point where you don't really have the energy drain. And again, you're able to really react, but react in a good sort of way. So I hope that's helpful for you. Why don't you leave a comment below? Let me know what ways you found that most help you to manage your reactivity. I'll talk to you soon, but until next time, keep moving forward. See ya.